Welcome to MSUA Game Changers Live, where we speak with satellite and mobile connectivity thought leaders about industry trends, new technologies, and share what you need to know about where satellite technology is headed in the future. I'm your host, Lisa Dreer. Our guest today is Kevin Steen. He is the Chief Executive Officer for ST Engineering, iDirect. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to this.
Thank you for making time and being here to chat with us today. So we invited you here today to talk a little bit about where things are headed in our industry, especially related to mobile connectivity. And maybe we can just start by having you talk a little bit about ST Engineering, iDirect, and your background.
Perfect. Yep. So iDirect, we're a ground network infrastructure provider in the industry, market leader. We deliver advanced capabilities. Basically, in our view, we transform the satellite industry. So we're a global company. Operate in multiple markets. Key markets for us, we're a market leader in the mobility sector, which is cruise, maritime, aero. 80% market share in the TV broadcast market. We're also a market leader in the global government and defense markets, enterprise markets, and cell backhaul markets. Basically, we provide world-class solutions for connecting people, things, systems, and we have a heritage of industry breakthroughs. Myself, been here for over 11 years. Came up through the startup industry, software, hardware, ran the whole gamut from when I started, and here I am now in satellite, having a great time. Great people, engineers are extremely passionate. Love the industry, love the passion that people bring. Whenever I'm looking forward to getting back to seeing people live at conferences, right? So it's a great place to be.
Yeah, no doubt. I think we're all ready for that. We've seen our annual satellite conference being pushed back. So hopefully the September date sticks and we'll all see each other there. And then there's many other events coming up too. So it'll be great to be back live.
I agree.
Yeah. So I want to start by just asking you, what do you feel like is the most important role that the satellite industry is going to play in the future of mobile connectivity?
Yeah, good question. So I'd say that it's our most important roles are to meet the increasing demand, right? You just think about that insatiable demand to be connected. Our job, our role then, whether it's from a humanitarian perspective or an economic perspective, a government infrastructure perspective, is to be there with solutions that help our customers and their end customers be connected. So our job is to meet that demand, especially in places that only satellite can address, right? So we have a unique value proposition. That's our responsibility, is to make that happen. And I think secondly, it's basically to become a catalyst for economic growth for nations or businesses, right? Whether it's a business expanding in their existing markets or entering new markets, right? New markets get enabled. Our job is to be a catalyst for that growth. Our responsibility is to improve the way businesses operate and how the users connect, and essentially enable businesses to grow in ways they could not previously, either by integrating seamlessly into the global telecom fabric, or again, as I said, connecting people and systems and things in ways they've never been connected before.
That's great. So I think that the satellite industry is going through some of the most dramatic changes as ever right now. What do you see as some of the most significant changes that will happen over the next 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, so I think that it comes in like different flavors. So A is technology, and then B, we can talk about COVID and the recovery we'll go through. And so technology, these are enablers. Like people talk about 5G. 5G is an enabler. It's not a market. But those 5G standards are going to have a tremendous positive impact on the market. So being compliant, being compatible, incorporating those into our platform, into our capabilities, again, will enable us to seamlessly integrate into the global telecom fabric. So we need to move away from a catch-all phrase, right, to making it real, to being specific, new applications, right, what it means to us. I think that then we talk about new space, right? I put things in there like MEO, LEO, and onboard processing. There's all kinds of new technologies, if you will, that are coming online now or shortly in the next 5 years, because in satellite, 5 years is not a long time. It's not a long time in telecom. And so those new capabilities or technologies are going to enable connectivity and new services in ways that people can't even imagine today. These are new markets. You think of, will connected car happen or will it not? Will IoT, will it happen or will it not? They are all right there on the edge, or some of them already, moving into the mainstream, and satellite will play a huge role. And then we move into the new ground space, if you will, right? So 5G plays a role there. And from a mobility perspective, then it's all around service orchestration, making the satellite connectivity experience invisible to the end user. They want a terrestrial-like experience. And these changes in technologies I described, whether it's 5G or cloud enablement or virtualization, new technologies on board the spacecraft, and the new capabilities as we bring them all together in the ground segment, is going to be incredibly transformational. And it's driven by the investment that's coming into our industry. So we are seeing those investments, and we need to keep pace as innovation companies. We need to be investing as well. And then when you look at the COVID recovery, certain markets were reasonably resilient. You saw a lot of defense spending continue. You saw governments maybe pause on their infrastructure programs to turn their investments to health initiatives within their country. But you're seeing now that as they get vaccinated, they're starting to shift those budgets back. And so you see certain markets were a little more resilient, if you will. You see others that obviously, like cruise and aero, really got hit. You saw cell backhaul. So those networks were maybe expanding the pipes, less infrastructure and expansion, but you see that coming back. So I think those markets recovering are going to have a tremendous impact on us as budgets become more available. And I think it's going to snowball or accelerate as the investment continues to pour into the industry. It's just going to grow exponentially. I think that you saw the global satellite operators, though, if they were on pace to launch a new constellation, they really didn't slow down. So it's their pace of launch stayed there. And when we come out of the full COVID recovery, they'll have the capacity there. And it's going to be incredible to watch and see how this happens.
Yeah, no doubt. So when you look at the past year, you're kind of alluding to this already. It's been a year unlike any other. And so when you think about the business climate in our industry, how do you kind of see that going forward? You sound pretty optimistic.
I'm very, very much optimistic. People who know me would say I'm definitely a glass half full kind of person. So from the economic climate, again, you see business jets, business aviation making an incredible surge, as opposed to some of their commercial counterparts, which will take maybe a little longer for people to be comfortable flying globally or internationally on a wide body aircraft. So you see the business jet market taking advantage of this, and you see new offerings in the business jet segment where they want simple installations, quick provisioning, a user experience on board that small aircraft that is as close as you can get to terrestrial. And they've had some great feedback. We've seen some partners launch those types of services. We see that commercial airlines, if they're smart, and we assume they are, they're using this time to really get ready for that comeback surge. Right, so they're going to assess and ensure they have the performance and the reliability of their IFC network, and so they want to hit the ground running, no pun intended. When that market comes back, they want that passenger experience to be extremely positive. So they're lining up their investments or keeping their investments going. Again, we support their big player in the aero industry, right? So we're very much in favor, and we're very much supporting our customers to get ready for that. But again, they need to orchestrate that capacity, right? So they've got spot beams here. They need to make sure they've got that capacity lined up and ready to go, so that network can be orchestrated effectively, if you will, as they come back online. I think that we see an enormous transformation in maritime. So while cruise was obviously hit very hard, we see some of the other maritime segments and say fishing markets doing quite well. But the digital transformation is having an incredible impact on that industry, whether it's standardization of data, the ability to bring back maintenance data, or the ability for crews to be connected. When we think about some of the increase in network traffic, even during COVID, a lot of that was driven by crew welfare. So it's nice that we were able to offer something to crews who were in very difficult situations during COVID, either stranded somewhere or just at work, but be able to be connected to their families from an application perspective, because when they came back to shore, they couldn't necessarily just go visit. So they got to be connected in ways that we were proud to help. But we see those types of applications in the maritime space as incredible. We saw how COVID shifted our focus of, okay, let's make some investments here. Let's focus our energies here during COVID. And it's helping us and it's helping others. But as we come out of it, it'll be, it has shown people what satellite can do in ways they never really maybe thought of. And then I think of during this time, small antennas continue to make their march forward. Everybody's been waiting for that magic flat panel antenna. I always say it's around the corner, and I really believe it. They've made tremendous progress over the past 2 years, right? It is like a curve, and I think they're accelerating, and they're getting closer and closer to solving those last final hard problems. We see those in the market now, some of those flat panel antennas. So I think it's been an interesting time. At the same time, you see things like IoT and land mobility continuing to march forward in doing proof of concepts and trials and things that people can or can't do, and validating those service offerings in those markets. So COVID didn't necessarily stop that advancement in the context of people can do those proof of concepts remotely. So it's been really interesting to see. And again, it was a tragic time for many, and sad things happened. At the same time, we've seen some positive things come out of it. I'm kind of a silver lining kind of person. And so I am optimistic.
That's great. So when you think about some of those use cases you were talking about, whether it's maritime or land mobile or what have you, when from a user perspective, what sort of criteria from a satellite services perspective should they be looking at and considering to make sure that they're getting the connectivity that they need? Should they be asking, am I going to connect to a GEO versus a LEO versus a MEO? And I mean, what do they need to care about?
Yeah, so number one, I love this forum, right? You clearly say it loud and clear in your mission statement, right? You're focused on the users, the end users. So I think that's fantastic. And it's an interesting forum. We always think about, we focus on our near-term customers, our direct customers. And I always try to remind folks here, let's think about their customers, because that's what drives our customer success. So users, they want, number one, confidence that it'll work, right? They want to know that where I am, I have service. And when I need it, it's on, it works. Granted, there are some unique laws of physics in satellite, of course, but that doesn't deter users from their expectations, right? They go to their office and they have an experience. They go home, they have an experience, and whether or not it's satellite is almost irrelevant to them. They expect that type of experience no matter where they are. So I think what they want to do then is look for a service provider that has invested in their technology, is forward thinking, and is adopting newer technologies, has a wide variety or a good breadth of service offerings and capabilities, and one who has selected the right technology partners to work with. Right? So at iDirect, we're an enabler of our service providers so they can differentiate and offer a service. So they want to look for service providers that have invested in their infrastructure and are forward thinking about where they are, where do they have coverage, what types of technologies, what are the plans, feeds and speeds, and what are the capabilities, and what are all the markets, right, that as an end user I can think about being in, and how does it enable my business to be successful, and how does it help me as a manager or as a P&L owner, how does it enable me to achieve my objectives? We can talk about, very specific markets if you would like, from a user perspective, be it maritime or aero, or we can, feel free to drive the question, where else would you like me to explore in this one? Because this is a very large topic when it comes to users.
Yeah, no doubt. So I don't know, give me a use case that you think is a good representation that would kind of let people, let users think about, okay, these are the things I really need to be considering. Sure. I need to be asking the solution provider these, 3 or 5 or 20 questions to make sure that I'm going to get the kind of connectivity I need to do what I'm trying to do.
All right, so good. Let's pick an oil rig, right? Oil exploration. So I'm an end user. I'm responsible for this oil rig, but inside that oil rig, I've got a multi-tenant environment. I've got to keep my crew who's running the place safe and happy, connected with family. I've got to get data off the oil rig back onshore to be analyzed, right? I've got to keep my vendor who's cafeteria food supplies. I've got to keep them connected. They've got to understand the inventory, and they got to be able to order more food to come back. And then I've got to maybe send maintenance data, ideally even streaming data, but how is the machinery operating, right? So I'm an oil rig. I've got to manage the connection to that oil rig. All right, I need a service provider that can provide a multi-tenant environment, different speeds and feeds, and maybe even some type of bursty capability going back. If I've got to send a large amount of data back via the exploration data, how do I handle that in a cost-effective way, right? I need something that stays connected during rough seas, so right, it's got to have the right type of antenna. And so it's those types of capabilities. Oh, I want my folks to actually make telephone calls. I want the crew to be able to call their family instead of just email. Okay, so then I need a type of backhaul solution. So it's thinking of a service provider on the oil rig that could offer that breadth of services to you and to your then customers, if you will, in that multi-tenant environment, because you're running the network down to those people on that oil rig. So that's just a classic example of a very interesting application that I think of. How do we then enable our platform? Our platform is exactly designed for that. So I think in those terms, obviously, connected to our business, obviously. But so that's one example. You can think of I'm a multi-service provider and I want to offer an IoT service to this end customer. They want to monitor the health of their equipment in the field, or they want to monitor what's in those containers coming across the ocean. I am Maersk, and my customers want to see that their containers are temperature controlled and safe, and they want to know where they are at all times. Okay, I need a service provider that can offer effective IoT bandwidth, that can do tracking, GPS reliably, and can track the health and safety and the compliance of my importation of my containers in and out of countries. Right, so you need a service provider that thinks that way. So those are the kind of use cases that come to mind as you're talking to a service provider and how you would pick one.
Great. So as a user, again, what types of new technologies do the users need to know about right now? And what do they kind of need to be thinking about and planning for so that they're ready as these technologies come to market?
So you caught me this is a good one. So I constantly talk to the engineers here saying the end user, the fact that they're on satellite should be invisible. It should be transparent. It should just work, right? They shouldn't have to know all the details about our industry. So I try not to make the technology the most important things to the end users, but it is about the technology. So let's talk about, I'll try and put it in a context where I would be comfortable talking to an end user in a way that they should think about it. So number one, people understand, they hear all the buzz around LEO, MEO, and GEO. So from a technology perspective, something of interest to them is, hey, service provider, do you work across all three orbital planes, right? Can you provide a service, and can we take advantage of the unique advantages of each of those orbital planes? Is that something you can offer me in terms of lowest cost of delivery or high throughput with low latency, depending on my applications, right? So that's one of the cool, I think, call it a technology, call it a capability as those satellites come online. That's one. I think the other one is, can you offer me quality of service? So at iDirect, we've just released our MRC technology. So I don't expect the end users to necessarily understand that acronym. It's part of our waveform, but it is an incredibly efficient, capable waveform, but it offers the ability for service providers to offer end users a quality of service to meet bursty demand, to meet large number of terminals coming into the network or in the network. So it's very, very capable, it's very sophisticated waveform that supports multi-applications. And for a service provider, it helps them operate in multiple markets. So they can pass on those savings, those efficiencies of their advantages to those end users. You think of mobility markets, beam switching. Okay, I know just enough to know about satellite that I'm going to change beams. What happens when I'm out there in mobility? Do I get a seamless handoff like I do on my hand phone, on my cell set, when I go from tower to tower and I'm driving on the highway, my call doesn't drop or my session doesn't drop, I don't have to re-log in? Does that happen? So those types of technologies we have those today, we're constantly improving them, but it's all around fast beam switching, fast reacquisition, right? How is the user experience going to be during a mobility setup or a mobility market? And those are the types of technologies that they would want to think about. I would say that will 5G and will cloud enablement have a large impact? It will, maybe not so much that they think about it in the deepest technical terms, but in terms of service provisioning and the way service orchestration will work and how service plans will work, that'll be cool. And so those are technologies, again, on our roadmap that we're integrating in order to integrate into that global telecom fabric. So I think those are some of the things that they see. I think the nearest thing they can probably touch is some of the CPE, the end user device, right? So what sits out there, what do they have to buy? What do they have to install? So I think the flat panel technology is going to be a real game changer when it comes out in the right form factor, at the right size, weight, power, and price. So I think that's probably the last one I would highlight is, those technologies coming online are going to enable a tremendous amount of services and applications in the market. And that's another aspect of how they should be thinking about the technologies that they want to assess in their service provider or in those offerings.
Right. Do you think, I think you were kind of alluding to this, but I'm interested in your perspective. Traditionally, satellite connectivity has been sold in megahertz, and there's been, kind of a need for those buying satellite services to really have a good understanding of how satellite connectivity works. Do you see a movement toward not having to have that special knowledge from the buyer perspective, the user perspective?
I absolutely do. We need to make it easier for end users to digest satellite, right? So instead of them having to understand what is a megahertz, right, sell it in megabits, because they're, again, we're used to it on our phone, we're used to it at our house, where it's all you can eat, all those, right? So absolutely, I see that the selling patterns or the service plans will get more and more terrestrial-like in nature, and it'll be easier for them to then digest those plans. So I absolutely believe that we are going to shift far away from the megahertz model when it comes to the traditional end users. Might there be someone who says, listen, I'm going to occupy so much of that satellite, I want to buy it in a different way. I'm going to buy half your satellite. Well, those people probably are a little different, a little more sophisticated, or a little different user, and they may still want to talk in megahertz. But I think the vast majority of things are going to be done and sold in megabits, because the end user wants to buy in megabits. That's what they're used to. So our service providers have already started to make that shift. Many of them already have, and have started selling in a megabit model instead of a megahertz model. But yes, I absolutely believe it.
Well, great. Kevin, I want to thank you so much for being here today to share your insights on satellite mobile connectivity. And I really look forward to having you on again in the near future so we can dig into some of these topics a little bit more deeply, maybe.
Would love it. Thank you so much for having me. It was an honor. I enjoyed it. This is the fun stuff.
Thank you. I also want to take a minute to thank the Mobile Satellite Users Association for hosting these sessions. And to learn more about how to become a guest on Game Changers Live, become a member of the MSUA, or receive our weekly newsletter called Satellite Mobile News, visit msua.org. And we'll see you next time on MSUA Game Changers Live.